Welcome to Comical Recovery with your friend and host, comedian Jessica Byrne, creator of Bud Ease, the upcoming cartoon, winner of multiple East Coast comedy contests, and of course, 35 or 6 or 7 consecutive years of trauma. We're still counting, still traumatizing ourselves, of course, with the ripple effect of choices that we make on a regular basis. Because that's what happens when you have some trauma. You have to unravel, untangle, and become aware of all of the nonsense that has been bundled up into your life. It's pretty neat stuff. So I picked the topic this week of wreckage of present behavior. In the program, we talk about the wreckage of our past, and when we are in recovery of whatever sort, every present day is an opportunity to create a better past. You can't change your past. You can just create a better past by the things that you choose. Or at least that's my belief. But you have to have awareness in order to figure out what your habits are as they are. I wrote people, places, and things, and my part, because that's kind of how this all works out. Resentments is on my list, and the fourth step, you don't know what that is if you're not in the program. But just about anybody can Google it and find out. What it is a way for you to find out exactly what your behaviors are based on your happy little resentments against others, which is a super fun thing to do if you couldn't pick up on the sarcasm in my voice. It actually is a very helpful tool, and it talks about social instincts that are affected by your behavior, like self-esteem, personal relations, security instincts like material and emotional security, selfishness, dishonesty, self-seeking, being frightened, and being inconsiderate are on the list as well. It sounds really fun, right? I'm sure. Fear's also on this list. But today, like I said, I want to talk about the wreckage of the present behavior. And I was thinking about my current behavior and the habits that I hold so tightly onto. So I made you a list. One of my super amazing character qualities is self-sacrificing for a relationship or partner. And it doesn't have to be a intimate relationship. It can actually, for me, be a friendship or a work relationship. It's pretty unbiased for me. Of course, it came from childhood. I had mixed messaging, so there's this idea of conditional love that is stuck like chewing gum to the bottom of my soul. And I can't seem to scrape it off, yet. But I'm trying. I'll take some Goo Gone to it, whatever I gotta do to get rid of that one. And the other ones that I'm about to share with you. Occasionally I get codependent because I don't want to be responsible for my own security and social instincts. That one's fun. So I tend to rely on outside sources for self-esteem and gain self-esteem based on my personal relationships. Maybe you can relate, maybe you can't. Of course, I also want my material security to be taken care of and my emotional security as well. So my social and security instincts are wrapped up in codependency. That's a fun one to deal with. Why are we talking about all of this horrible stuff, Jessica? Well, because it's a new year and everybody wants to be a new you when we're the same old me. So I figured what I would do this year is just take a good hard look at who I am and what those character defects that I'm holding on to really look like. And here they are. I do a little enabling. That's pretty fun. And that's to avoid conflict and consequences. Yes. Oh, here's a good one. I just added this to the list. It's vengeance, to retaliate and get even. Not my finest quality, but I still apparently have that one because it is newly written to the list as of about 5 minutes ago. And another one written to the list that we're doing right now is overeating and consuming sugar to feel comfort and disassociate from insecure, hurt, or injured feelings. Yes, you're welcome for sharing all of my insanity with you. You're welcome. So, let's talk about self-sacrificing for a relationship or partner or friendship or work. Because I'm a firm believer that everything has a benefit to it. So, self-sacrificing has a couple of benefits. Like I said before, it's got this conditional love attached to it. So I'm acceptable if I do X, Y, and Z is attached to that. But it also gets me this, get my feelings hurt for free card because of my expectations. So what I do when I self-sacrifice in hopes for gaining some sort of approval is I actually end up setting myself up for rejection and resentments. Well, how does that look, Jessica? Oh, I will share it with you. Don't you worry your pretty little face. Let me think about an example. Well, if I self-sacrifice my hopes and dreams, then I don't ever have to experience failure. And then I can turn my anger outward towards said person that I sacrificed for and not take any personal responsibility for the success or failure of my own outcome. Isn't that fun? Yes, reality and growth and awareness sucks. Just in case you were wondering, it's not a super fun road. However, on the flip side of knowing all these things, the good news, because there is good news, is I get to take personal responsibility and make my own choices. And that comes with, of course, a fun little cost. Yes, because boundaries, let me tell you, we talked about those last month and I applied them. So when you didn't hear from me, that's what I was doing. I was applying boundaries. Well, if you haven't felt pain emotionally yet this year, I suggest you try on some boundaries because those are painful AF. However, beneficial as well. None of these things that we're talking about are easy, but they're worth it. I know that sounded like a question. Because clearly part of me still wonders if they are worth it, but they are worth it. Because creating some personal space and stepping into my responsibilities gives me some freedom and choices. So, taking responsibility for myself is pretty darn beneficial. So let's go to the next. Codependent so that I can be irresponsible and not worry about my material and emotional security. Let's talk about that, because how do you get emotional security from yourself? Some might ask. I certainly would a few years ago, but I have the answer today. It's pretty obvious how to get material security, so let's move to and stay on some emotional security. Emotional security can be had in a few different ways. One of the ways that I like to get it is affirmations, and I really enjoy listening to affirmations that are already pre-made and recorded on YouTube, and I listen to them right before I go to sleep, because your brain is in theta, I believe is the word I'm looking for, theta. So it's in a theta wave, which is a not quite sleeping state, but a slowed down pace that taps into your subconscious so that you can create new recordings of self-talk, essentially. That is one way that I enjoy doing that, and it is definitely the simplest way to trick my brain into happy thoughts. But another really effective tool is mirror time, as I like to call it, and that is engaging in some good old self-cheerleading in the mirror. I personally like to look myself straight in the eyes as if I'm talking to someone else. I would guess that 90% of you probably think that's crazy. However, I have verified it with my therapist, and she and he, both of them, they are not one person. They're two different people. Don't ask me how many therapists I have had, or have been through. It's none of your business. But I digress. They all say that this is a good tool to use. And when I'm having trouble doing this for myself, I oftentimes replace me with a friend. And I think to myself, how would I talk to so-and-so about said situation? And then I give myself a little pep talk. So that is how I personally handle my emotional security. Don't get me wrong, I don't always use these tools. Sometimes I forget that I even have them, or I just ignore them and be a little brat to myself because sometimes I don't want a solution to my problems. However, it's a lot less painful if I just use the stinking solutions. So I'm trying really hard this year to apply the things that I know and I've read about and that I'm going to read. The same kind of thing goes with self-esteem. I pretty much firmly believe in cheerleading self or calling some friends and getting some feedback from them. It is good to have support, and you can't cheerlead yourself all the time. So, when it gets a little exhausting or tiring, hand the pom-poms to someone that you trust. So, how about the enabling to avoid conflict and consequences? Well, here's a nice, hard truth that I don't ever want to hear, so we'll hear it together. Conflict and consequences are part of life. And your choices and the things that you do that are best for you are going to make someone upset, most likely, at some point in your life. But you have to live with you. People come and go. You are the one that has to live with you. So I often have to think about how I'm going to feel in the future, Is future me going to be upset if I don't make these decisions? Because 5 years from now, is whomever I'm going to upset in this present day going to be in my 5 years from now? Is it hurting them intentionally? Or is it just disappointing them momentarily? Self-reflection is a pretty darn powerful tool, and I like to keep it in my tool belt so I can use it at any given moment. Sitting down with a pen and my journal has saved me probably every time. Not doing that has hurt me every single time. That's usually when my consequences come to play, because I just react to whomever or whatever. And then I either have internal anger towards myself, or I have a resentment towards someone else that just festers and grows, and I water it and it gets big, and I never frickin' chop the tree down. I just think about burning it. Anyways, nothing in particular on my mind with that. And here's an oldie but a goodie I haven't gotten rid of yet. Vengeance, to retaliate and get even. Now, when you're going through your Rolodex of crappy character traits, don't beat yourself up if you're looking at yourself and you realize you've done something after the fact, because that happens to me all the time. All the time. And we're human. We make mistakes. The awareness is key. You can't change anything you're not aware of. So when you're just doing it over and over again subconsciously and don't recognize it, you're kind of powerless to the behavior. But when you stop and pause and reflect on how it's making you feel, that's the ticket right there. Your feelings are clues. They are the street signs and signals to your internal guiding system. That's why I am in recovery, because whilst out there in the world, running and gunning, if you will, I was shutting down my signs and signals to the internal guiding system. I was just drowning all of that stuff out with whatever I could get my hands on. So today, I like to look at these things because vengeance is only going to hurt me in the long run. It's going to hurt the way that I feel about myself, and it's actually going to affect my self-esteem, because I will no longer have integrity when I start trying to stoop to what I perceive as someone else's level. And I say perceive because that might not be malicious intent on their part, or maybe it is. But there are a lot of people with personality disorders out there that are just kind of rolling around on instinct, trying to survive. So instead of being mad at them, I can just get out of their way and not let them into any parts of my life. That way I don't have to get vengeance or even, or whatever it is that I think. And lastly, my favorite, which I'm not ready to give up yet, is overeating and consuming sugar to feel comfort and disassociate from insecure and hurt or injured feelings. I do know what I will be replacing it with, however. I will be replacing it with art, because sometimes when your feelings are too overwhelming, I like to just throw a bunch of color on a piece of paper or a canvas, step back a few feet, and then decide what in the heck is going on within me based on whatever I just threw up on a blank sheet. That might sound crazy, but if you've been listening to the last few podcasts, you should know by now who you're dealing with. So, how how do we go into hurt and insecure, injured feelings? Well, I think that the biggest issue that I've had in my growing up is being told not to cry and not to feel sad. Or my favorite thing that was ever said to me as a kid was, if you want something to cry about, I will give you something to cry about. Well, no, thank you, family. Obviously, that is taken care of. I obviously have something to cry about, and it doesn't need to be a physical assault. But I do appreciate the offer. Isn't that a weird thing that we say? I'll give you something to cry about. Well, clearly I have something. It doesn't really matter what it is. I have it. I'm good. I don't need two things. I just need one. I'd like to just cry and get over this. And that's pretty much how I handle that, is I like to just cry and feel my feelings and be okay with it and maybe comfort me. And I don't really care how weird that sounds or looks to someone, because by the end of it, I feel better because I've honored my feelings and created a safe place for me to emote. That to me is way more important than how it looks or makes somebody else feel. And I think that's what gets me, at least, in trouble the most, is that I'm so worried about other people and what they think or feel. They don't have to live in my body. They don't have to live with my mind and all of the crappy things that go on up there on occasion. Only me. Only I have to. Just like you. Only you have to deal with you on a regular basis, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So who better to be your bestie than you is my new scenario. So maybe not new year, new you. But you don't need a new you. How about new year, new relationship with you? That is going to be my mantra. And I hope that you find your own mantra that serves you this year. Thank you again for joining me. I am your host with the most drama. Remember, laughter is the best medicine. I hope I tickled your funny bone today. And I will see you in the next week.